Hello YouTube, this is Billy. Today I'm coming to you with a 2000 Lexus GS300. Today's video will be replacing the front brake pads. So I've just pulled it into the garage. The first thing I need to do would be to loosen the lug nuts a little bit. After loosening them a little bit, I will get the other wheels blocks. I'll put some blocks to prevent the vehicle from rolling forward or back. Because after I loosen the lug nuts, then I'll just raise the wheel up and then go ahead and take the lug nuts off, and then take the tire off and set it to the side. So here we go. Okay, so here we are. Now after loosening the lug nuts a little bit, I put blocks around the other three tires to prevent the vehicle from rolling back or forward. I've got the floor jacking the tire off the ground, and I got some jack stands down there for safety measure as well. My dad taught me to always put the tire under the vehicle as well. That way, in case, worst case scenario, it's not going to crash down entirely all the way to the ground. In any event, so now that we've got the tire off, this is your brake caliper. I'm just replacing brake pads. For anybody that wants to do more in-depth, this may not be the video for you. I'm just replacing the brake pads, and while I'm replacing the brake pads, I will make sure that there's no issues going on. And as long as there is no issues going on, and what I mean by that is these slide boats, they kind of slide in and out. So as long as I've got decent movement with my slide boats, I won't be trying to do more than it needs. In any event, so here's your caliper. This piece right here, this is the bracket. I plan on leaving it attached. The caliper head, this piece right here, it's got this slide bolt here, and then another one that looks just like it down here. That one and that one. It's got this squishy rubber thing because as you function your brakes, it kind of slides back and forth like this. In any event, I will get these two slide bolts loosened and pull them out. This whole caliper will separate from the rest of it. This whole head will come out. Now when this comes out, this hose that's attached to it, just be careful. Don't mess up your hose. I usually use zip ties. I'll put zip ties around my spring, and then through one of these holes or something to support it. You don't want this hose supporting this brake line hose. You don't want that hose supporting the weight of the caliper head. So that's where we're at now. I'm gonna loosen both of these bolts and remove them, and then get this caliper up and out of the way for the moment, and then we will have access to the brake pads. You have a brake pad on this side and a brake pad on the inside. So that's where we're at. Okay, those two bolts, they are 14. So I've already got them broke loose. So now I can actually turn them by hand. So I'm just going to get these bolts all the way out and set aside, and get me some zip ties going so that I'm ready to kind of hang the caliper head up again, so that it's not putting any stress on that brake line hose. Okay, as you can see, I took me some zip ties and got them got the caliper head zip tied up to keep stress and weight off of the brake line hose. Now you can see brake pads, and you can see the little spring clips. So there's a good shot of the little spring clips. Those little spring clips, they just kind of pop straight up and out. You got one right there and one right there. I should be able to get one of those out right here pretty easy, like. I'm trying to get that light to cooperate a little bit. Okay, so yeah, these little spring clips, they're inside the little hole there. See that? So that little, it just goes right in that little hole. Same thing on the other side. So there's that spring clip. We'll set this aside and get this other one out as well. And set those aside so that we don't lose them. They help reduce noises and things while you're driving. Now you also have these little clips, these little anti-rattle clips here on that bottom ear of the brake pad and on that top ear of the brake pad. So now I'm just going to work these out, get these brake pads worked out, get this front one worked out toward me and this back brake pad worked out towards the motor of the vehicle, that way there. In any event, while I'm working those out, I will be trying to get a real good visual on these little brake clips to make sure I'm not bending them up or anything like that. So once I get these brake pads wiggled out of there, then we can compare the old brake pad with the new brake pad. Okay, so here are the old brake pads sitting beside the new brake pads, and you will see a vast difference in thickness, obviously, because these brake pads were needing to be replaced pretty bad. You can tell they were basically paper thin versus these new ones that are really nice and thick. In any event, so at this point, you want to make sure you've got the right parts for the right job. Make sure that they're an exact match. Now on the caliper, you'll notice these round pistons. There's two of them. Those two round pistons, they're on the back side of the caliper, just like it is in this picture right now. They're on the back side. They're on the inside of the back. So this back brake pad is being pushed in by those two brake calipers. So that's how you can tell which one came from the back, because all you gotta do is look at your old pads when you've got them out and just look for those round spots. See the round spot here and the round spot there? So this guy right here was in the back, and you'll notice on one side it has this clip that sticks up, and on the other side it does not have that clip that sticks up. So you want to make sure you're putting your replacement pads in the exact same position. So looking for those two round marks to identify that this is the back one. So this is the pad side. So by knowing it's got those round spots on it and it's on the inside, you can tell, because if I was to try to put it the other way, it's backwards, and now these need to be up against those brake caliper pistons. So it's this way here, and it's on that back side on the inside. So this part that my thumb's touching is what touches the brake rotor. And in this position, which is the correct position for it, you can tell it's got that on the bottom down here by my pinky. It has that little clip, and on the top side up here, it does not. So that would be the correct location placing for the pad that matches this pad. And by knowing that one goes back there, this one automatically comes to the front. And same thing, this pad part right here is what touches the brake rotor here. So it's got to be in that position. And this one is also similar, as in that little clip that's on the bottom. That is the position it goes in. It goes this clip in the bottom. And when I pulled these pads out, all I did was start at this bottom down here and popped it out, and then the top popped right out with it. It came out really easy on both sides. And again, I went from the bottom first. I pulled the bottom out and then popped the top out, and they just popped out really easy. So now I'm just matching up the new pads to the old pads, making sure I'm putting the correct pad in the correct placement. In any event, that's where I'm at. Now would also be a good time to check out your slide bolts. Right here where the little rubber thing is. If you just grab this and go in and out like that, it should move around pretty good. So that's what you want. It needs to be like that. If you're having to try entirely too hard to get that to go in and out, then you may need to watch another video on disassembling this part and putting fresh grease and cleaning it and, you know, getting it to operate more smooth. Same thing down here on this one here. You know, I've got nice, good, free movement. I'm not having to fight it or nothing, so I'm not worried about doing that procedure at the moment. So both of those check out good. I just wanted to include that part into the video. Now, I did shuffle the new brake pads. I shuffled them around to get them to where I have them in this position. These are the two old ones, and these are the two new ones. And in this position, it looks like I've got them matched up really well. This one looks identical to that one, and this one looks identical to that one. So because of those round marks, I know this one's going to be my inside one, and this one will be my outside one. And because of what we already looked at just a minute ago, these little clips here, because we already looked at it, we know those will be on the bottom side. So in any event, now I'm just going to start getting these new pads in place, and I will try to get the outside one with you guys watching and see if I can do this with you guys watching. It's hard to hold the phone and do this all at the same time. Again, those round marks, this one matches this one. Those round marks are on the inside. It's going to be easier for me to try to show you the outside. So this one is the outside. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get that little ear to go in on that top side like that, and then line up that bottom ear and just kind of pop it in there. Whoop, I lost my light, but looks like I got it to pop in there. So let me get that light going again. Okay, so there we go. I got it to pop in. Again, I inserted the top ear first and then lined up the bottom ear and then just popped it right in there. I will do the same thing to the inside one. And then it's just getting the caliper head back on and getting those bolts back on. Now, so that's where we're at. Okay, you guys, I got them popped in there. I actually laid down and had my head down here so that I could see better to get that top ear in place. And then in any event, yeah, that just get that top one in place and then line up the bottom one and then just pop it in. Rather easy. So there they are, they're both in place. So now I will carefully hold the, oh, let's see, we gotta get those calipers. We gotta get both of those calipers, these caliper pistons. We gotta get both of those caliper pistons pushed back. Now they do have tools you can rent to push them back. I'm gonna make do with what I have here. I have a clamp that I will get a C-clamp, where my thumb is at and back here where my finger is at. And I will, now before I do that, I will come to the top side up here, and because when you push that caliper piston, when you push it back, that fluid needs a place to go. So by taking the reservoir cap, taking it off and setting it to the side, now the brake fluid has an easy way to flow back to the reservoir. Another thing too is, it may be harder to see in the video, but right here at this line, that's how much brake fluid I have at the moment. Now, as I do this tank's gonna get fuller and fuller. On the passenger side, it'll get halfway full, you know, from where it's at to up here. And then when I get done doing the driver's side, it'll be all the way full. Now, if you're like me and you've let your brake pads get super thin before doing this,
There may be more fluid in this reservoir than is needed, so just kind of keep your eye on that. If it looks like it's starting to overflow, what I do is I just I actually take a hose and stick it in there to siphon out carefully a little bit of the fluid, so that I don't have fluid just leaking all over the place. In most cases, you will have exactly a full tank on your reservoir when you have gotten both sides done on the vehicle. Again, just kind of keep an eye on it. Just be aware that if it's overflowing here, that just means that you waited so long to put new brake pads that you added fluid to it to make up the difference, because the pads get thinner and thinner, and then your tank looks like it's losing fluid. It's not really losing fluid, it's just taking more fluid to push those super thin pads to stop the vehicle. In any event, so that's where we're at. I've got my little lid set aside there. That way the fluid can easily go back to the reservoir while I put my little clamp on this part, this round part here. Now, I do recommend taking the old brake pad. The old brake pad, I recommend setting it in there like this, and then put your clamp on that, on the pad, and then the back side of the piston. Now, when you do that, you just want to be careful that you're not trying to grab a hold of anything that could cause damage. So the backside, you know, on the backside of the caliper, just make sure you're not getting into your hose or your fitting or anything right there. So you, like right here where my finger's touching, I'll have my C-clamp right here where my finger's touching, in a safe spot. And with that brake pad right here, I'll place that brake pad on there, and then I will put the C-clamp in there. That way, whenever I tighten that C-clamp, it's gonna push both of these pistons back until once I get both of these pistons all the way back, then, and when you push it back, that's when that fluid goes back to the reservoir. In any event, after getting these pistons all the way back, then I'll just carefully cut my zip tie and put the caliper head back in place, and then put those 2 bolts in. So that's where we're at. Okay, I just wanted to show you guys how I've got my little C-clamp rigged up. I'm using a 6-inch C-clamp, and I've got the old brake pad in there. That way, as I tighten my clamp, it's gonna push both of those pistons back at the same time. And on this back side, I'm just careful that I'm not up against any of these little fittings or hoses or anything like that. That way I can tighten it and safely push those pistons all the way back. So after I get these pistons all the way back, then we'll be right back. Okay, and here we are with the pistons pushed all the way back. I do recommend that when you're tightening the clamp and pushing the pistons back, keep in mind that the pressure of pushing it back is pushing that fluid back to the reservoir. So what you want to do is turn it a little bit, count for 10 seconds, and then turn it a little bit, count for 10 seconds. Turn it a little bit, count for 10 seconds. And whenever it gets all the way back, you will feel a very distinct difference whenever when it's all the way back. It'll feel completely different. When you're trying to tighten on the clamp, it'll just be like, whoop, no more. After getting the clamp loosened and set aside, and the little brake pad also set aside over there, so here's the pistons in the all the way back position. Now you'll notice this little rubber boot that goes around the piston. Now is a good time to look at it and make sure that you want them to basically look kind of like it does right now, where it's nice and safe and out of the way. If you do have any kind of spots where this rubber is just kind of popped out, most of the time you can just push on it with your finger and just kind of push on it all the way around. Just push on it and push on it, and with your finger, because you don't want to tear your little rubber boot, okay? And just push on it until you get it to set pretty. Now on mine, this spot right here that I'm touching was actually a little difficult,
And, you know, so to help this little spot that was being difficult to go, you know, more normal like the rest of it, I actually took an old cigarette butt like this and just flattened it out, just made it nice and flat. Just kind of step on it or smush it down towards nice and flat. And once you've got it nice and flat, you can take it and that little gap there, you can just shove it in there and massage it back. Because with something like this, it's not going to, you know, it's nice and firm, but it's soft. It's not going to tear a hole in the rubber boot. So if you do have a little spot like I did, this worked rather well for me in any event. So now we are ready to get those zip ties cut away from the caliper and carefully put the caliper slid back down into place and get those two little bolts on. Now those two little bolts, you don't want to tighten them too tight. Whenever you're putting those two bolts in, as soon as they start feeling like they're getting tight, just barely go a hair more. Don't over tighten it, because you can cause yourself a lot more trouble by trying to tighten that too tight. And if you wanted, you could look up the actual torque spec on it. In any event, as soon as it starts feeling tight, you know, as soon as it's feeling snugged up, just go a hair more. Don't over tighten it. You'll cause yourself some more expensive headaches. So anyways, that's where we're at. Okay, now I've got my little spring clips put back into place. It's real easy to see those little holes that they slide into, and you do want to make sure that you're got them all the way in good. So just push on them where they fit into those little holes and make sure they're in good. And then we've got the spring clips back in, and we are ready to start getting that caliper head lowered back into place. Okay, so after getting the zip tie cut and carefully bringing the caliper head back down into place, now just remember right here where those little rubber squishies are, where that slide bolt slides around, you may need to wiggle a little bit on those slide bolts to get it to line up into place. Mine slid in very easy. And in any event, getting those two bolts in, I just tightened them as tight as I could by hand, and then put my little 14mm socket and wrench on it and tighten it a little more. Again, you do not want to over tighten these caliper bolts here, okay? So after that would be getting the tire back on and snugging up those lug nuts, and then lowering the vehicle back to the ground, and then torquing those lug nuts down, and then doing the exact same thing with the other side. Now, whenever you're going to move the vehicle for the first time, you want to really work that brake pedal, okay? And don't forget that you've got your reservoir cap to put back on. And so earlier we saw the fluid level. Now that we've done one side, you can see the fluid that came back to the reservoir, where earlier it was down here where this little line is, in that little line right there. It was right there, and now you can see it's up here. So if I get the same amount on the driver's side, it looks like it'll be up here. So yes, it's going to be exactly what I was thinking, that it's going to be nice and full whenever I get the driver's side done as well. Now again, when you're done with the getting the new brake pads in place, and you're done with all of that, the first time you go to move the vehicle, really work that brake pedal. Just, you know, up and down and up and down and up and down, about 5 or 6 times, from, you know, all the way down and stuff, to that way you can feel that the brake pedal is feeling normal. And always be aware of your surroundings, and when you're putting the car in gear after doing brakes, just pump those brakes real good, and it gets everything back in position like it needs to be, so that when you go to use the brake pedal for the first time, it'll feel like normal. And in any event, well, for anybody this video may help, well, everybody be safe out there. Bye.